She-Hulk. Attorney at Law, 2022. She-Hulk. Attorney at Law introduced Jennifer Walters, a lawyer who, after a blood transfusion from her cousin Bruce Banner, the Hulk, gains ability to transform into the green, Hulk-like superhero known as She-Hulk.
Inhibitor. Jen, get away from me.
On the surface, the show was meant to explore important themes of feminism, self-empowerment, and gender politics, but it ultimately failed to balance these elements with strong, engaging storytelling. A significant part of the backlash was the show's overemphasis on its political messages. While it's clear that representation of women and empowerment was central to the show's theme, many viewers felt these issues were often prioritized over narrative depth. The humor, which was meant to be witty and self-aware, at times felt forced, particularly when it ventured into social commentary. It became clear that instead of focusing on developing the character of Jennifer Walters, the show spent more time on making statements about contemporary societal issues, detracting from the emotional investment in the characters.
When incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or
The tone was also a major issue. At times, She-Hulk shifted between lighthearted humor and serious themes, creating a jarring viewing experience. Furthermore, She-Hulk's fourth wall-breaking moments,
well, the only hulking out I'm going to do is in the legal sense,
where she directly addressed the audience.
About that, it's true. I am a Hulk. And I'm guessing you're not going to be able to focus on this fun lawyer show until you know all about that, so...
were intended to be comedic, but often fell flat, making these scenes feel awkward and out of place. Rather than adding charm or depth to the character, these moments felt more like a gimmick that disrupted the flow of the show. The failure to balance superhero elements with the political commentary ultimately left the audience feeling disconnected, as the show's broader cultural agenda overshadowed its core superhero narrative. Ms. Marvel, 2022. Ms. Marvel follows Kamala Khan, a teenage Muslim girl from Jersey City who discovers she has superpowers after finding a mysterious bangle that allows her to stretch and change the form of her body. The series was praised for its cultural representation, particularly in how it introduced the Muslim American experience to the MCU. However, the portrayal of Kamala's cultural identity ended up overshadowing her development as a superhero, which was a primary concern for many viewers. While the show made important strides in representation, the way it did so often felt forced. Instead of focusing more on Kamala's growth as a hero, the narrative seemed more preoccupied with exploring her cultural background and the societal challenges she faced as a Muslim teenager.
Kamala, क्या ये सब तुम्हारे रिश्तेदार हैं? हाँ, पाकिस्तानी है, रिश्तेदारों की कमी नहीं होती.
While this could have been a rich area for character development, the pacing felt uneven, and the show spent too much time on social issues, which came across as preachy to some viewers. These messages felt less integrated with the larger superhero narrative and more like an agenda that was prioritized above the action and character development that typically defines superhero shows. Additionally, the show's pacing suffered from a lack of balance between its coming-of-age elements and its superhero plot. The transition between lighthearted teen moments and high-stakes superhero action was awkward, leaving the audience unsure of what tone the show was trying to establish. The series' uneven narrative left many feeling that the important themes around identity and belonging were pushed to the forefront, while Kamala's potential as a superhero was underdeveloped. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier explored the transition of Sam Wilson into the role of Captain America, a pivotal moment in the MCU's post-Endgame universe. The series attempted to tackle significant issues like race and legacy, particularly through Sam's journey as a black man inheriting the mantle of Captain America. However, this thematic focus detracted from the more exciting aspects of the superhero genre and the deep character development many viewers expected. The political and racial commentary in the series, while important, was often handled in a heavy-handed manner. Instead of developing Sam as a hero in his own right, the show seemed to focus too much on his struggles as a black man in America, which, although relevant, overshadowed the broader action-driven narrative that would have typically defined a superhero show. Many fans wanted to see Sam embrace the full extent of Captain America's legacy, but the political narrative often felt more like a distraction than an enhancement to his character. Furthermore, the pacing of the show was criticized for being too slow. While the show's global political conflicts, such as those surrounding the Super Soldier Serum and the Flag Smashers, were intriguing, they didn't always serve the main character arcs. The show's villains were underdeveloped, making it harder for viewers to fully engage with the narrative. The heavy political messaging combined with these pacing issues made the show feel less impactful, leaving fans wanting more character-driven storytelling rather than an overt focus on political themes. Star Wars: The Last Jedi, 2017. The Last Jedi was a polarizing film in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, with significant backlash from fans and critics alike. The film sought to subvert expectations, particularly by depicting Luke Skywalker as a disillusioned recluse rather than the heroic Jedi many had anticipated. For fans who grew up with the original trilogy, this departure from Luke's heroic persona was jarring and left many feeling unsatisfied with his character's arc.
I'd seen it in moments during his training. And I was left with shame and with consequence.
Another controversial aspect of The Last Jedi was its treatment of Rey, the central character. In an effort to introduce new heroes into the Star Wars mythos, the film sidelined long-established characters, such as Luke and Leia, in favor of Rey's story. This shift was viewed by some fans as a disservice to the franchise's original characters, who were seen as central to the emotional core of Star Wars. Furthermore, the film pushed a number of social themes, such as the idea that heroism can come from anyone, regardless of their lineage. While this is a valid narrative choice, the way it was handled felt overly politicized and detracted from the traditional Star Wars mythos. The movie's treatment of the Force also sparked debate. By making the Force more about letting go of attachment rather than the more structured philosophies of the Jedi and Sith, The Last Jedi alienated fans who valued the deeper lore of the Star Wars universe. The film's subversion of classic tropes and its push for modern cultural themes ultimately overshadowed the elements that had made the original Star Wars stories so beloved. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, 2019. The Rise of Skywalker aimed to wrap up the sequel trilogy, but left many fans feeling that the narrative was rushed and inconsistent. The film attempted to undo some of the decisions made in The Last Jedi, such as bringing back Emperor Palpatine, but did so without a coherent explanation.
My faithful.
Nothing will stop the return of the Sith!
Leading to confusion among viewers. The sudden reappearance of Palpatine felt like a plot twist designed more to appease disappointed fans than to advance the story. The pacing of The Rise of Skywalker was also criticized for being too frantic. The film tried to tie up multiple storylines in a short amount of time, resulting in a lack of emotional depth and character development. Many fans felt that the film's attempt to please everyone through fan service and nostalgic callbacks came at the expense of a more coherent and impactful narrative. The political and social themes present in Rey's identity and the struggle for control of the galaxy felt forced and detracted from what could have been a more satisfying conclusion to the saga. Andor, 2022. Andor was a prequel to Rogue One, focusing on Cassian Andor's journey before he joined the rebellion. The series was praised for its production quality and mature themes, particularly its exploration of rebellion and oppression. However, many viewers found the show's slower, more methodical pacing to be a departure from the action-heavy sequences typically associated with Star Wars. While the political commentary of the show was grounded in its themes of resistance,
what took place yesterday was unprovoked genocide.
it sometimes felt overly preachy. The focus on political intrigue and the complexity of the rebellion felt disconnected from the traditional Star Wars narrative, which is often defined by more direct action and adventure. Fans who were hoping for a more classic Star Wars experience, complete with lightsaber battles and space battles, were disappointed by the series' slower pace and lack of traditional Star Wars elements. This shift in focus, while intriguing for some, ultimately made the series less accessible to a broader audience. High School Musical: The Series, 2019. High School Musical: The Musical. The series aimed to capitalize on the nostalgia of the original High School Musical films, but struggled to recapture the magic that made the franchise so beloved. The series, set in the fictional East High School, reimagines the events of the original films as a musical production within the school. While the show tried to offer a self-aware, meta-commentary on the High School Musical universe, many fans of the original films found this approach self-indulgent and lacking in substance. The humor, designed to be cheeky and self-referential, often missed the mark, leaving many viewers unimpressed. Instead of feeling like natural comedy that emerged from the situations, it felt forced, making it difficult to engage with the characters in the story. The new cast, which was meant to offer a fresh perspective, failed to strike the same chord with audiences as the original cast had. The characters felt one-dimensional at times, and their attempts to modernize the High School Musical legacy came across as overly forced, rather than a natural progression of the story. This lack of emotional depth and connection left fans feeling disconnected from the characters and less invested in the overall narrative. While the series did try to honor the original with references and callbacks, its forced attempts to blend nostalgia with a modern take ultimately diluted the emotional impact and charm that made High School Musical special in the first place. Turner and Hooch, 2021. The Turner and Hooch TV series, inspired by the 1989 film, failed to capture the charm and dynamic that made the original a classic. While the film featured a fun and quirky bond between Cop Scott Turner and his mischievous dog, Hooch, the series struggled to replicate this relationship. The dynamic between the leads felt forced, and the humor didn't translate well to the small screen, often falling flat. Attempts to blend humor with more serious crime-solving moments created an inconsistent tone, making the show feel disjointed. The lack of chemistry between the leads and the clumsy modernization of the premise ultimately diminished the show's appeal, leaving viewers disconnected from the characters. The Big Leap, 2021. The Big Leap was a comedy drama series that aired on Fox, but it was produced by 20th Television, which is owned by Disney. The show, which followed a diverse group of people trying to achieve their dreams by participating in a dance reality show, failed to find its audience. Despite its relatable premise and heartwarming moments, the show struggled with pacing and tone. The characters, while likable, lacked depth, and the plot often felt predictable. The humor, meant to be uplifting, didn't resonate with viewers, and the attempt to blend drama with lighthearted moments often felt forced. The show's mixed messaging and lack of strong character arcs contributed to its failure to capture a loyal fan base. Despite its potential, The Big Leap didn't manage to carve out a place in the crowded landscape of network TV. Willow, 2022. Willow was meant to be Disney Plus's grand return to George Lucas's 1988 fantasy classic. On paper, it sounded like a guaranteed hit. Warwick Davis reprising his role, stunning locations, and the promise of expanding a beloved fantasy world. However, the series quickly alienated fans. Instead of doubling down on the magical lore and adventurous spirit of the original, it leaned heavily into contemporary humor, self-aware dialogue, and teen drama-style romance subplots. The biggest criticism came from its tone. Where the original film balanced whimsy with dark fantasy, the series often felt more like a CW teen drama dressed up in fantasy costumes. Attempts to inject modern-day slang and political undertones into the medieval setting created a disconnect, and fans accused the show of being more focused on ticking diversity and representation boxes than on delivering an immersive, timeless adventure. Ultimately, what was supposed to be a nostalgic return ended up being seen as a shallow reinvention that neither honored the original nor carved out a strong new identity. Secret Invasion, 2023. When Marvel announced Secret Invasion, fans expected a grounded political thriller with the paranoia of Winter Soldier and the suspense of a spy drama. The premise was promising: Skrulls infiltrating Earth at the highest levels of power, creating a climate of mistrust and betrayal. But instead of delivering tension, the show stumbled under the weight of poor pacing, lackluster villains, and heavy-handed commentary on immigration and global politics. Thematically, Secret Invasion tried to position the Skrulls as metaphors for marginalized groups seeking acceptance. While this idea had potential, the execution was clumsy, with constant reminders of its message overshadowing character arcs and the espionage thrills fans were hoping for. Worse, major characters like Nick Fury were sidelined or written inconsistently, and shocking twists, such as the fate of Maria Hill, felt cheap rather than impactful. Fans ultimately labeled it one of Marvel's weakest Disney Plus entries, not just because of its political undertones, but because those themes weren't woven organically into the kind of gripping, suspense-driven narrative the title promised. National Treasure: Edge of History, 2022. The National Treasure films starring Nicolas Cage had built a loyal following for their mix of history, puzzles, and globe-trotting adventure. Disney Plus attempted to revive that magic with Edge of History, but instead of capturing the clever treasure-hunting tone, the show veered hard into YA teen drama territory. The new cast, led by Lisette Oliveira, was praised for diversity, but fans criticized the characters as flat and the dialogue as forced. Much of the backlash came from how the series prioritized modern political and social themes over what made the original films fun: intricate riddles, high-stakes adventures, and clever historical twists. Instead of elaborate treasure hunts, the narrative often felt bogged down in melodrama and commentary. Fans who tuned in for a nostalgic continuation of the franchise felt misled, and newcomers didn't find enough to latch onto. The lack of a strong central performance, like Nicolas Cage's eccentric energy, further hurt the series. By its cancellation after one season, many saw it as a wasted opportunity that put cultural commentary ahead of entertainment value. Monsters at Work, 2021. Pixar's Monsters, Inc. is widely loved for its charm, humor, and heart. The spin-off series Monsters at Work aimed to expand that world, following what happened after the factory transitioned from scaring to laughter. While the setup had potential, the show's execution left audiences underwhelmed. Instead of balancing sharp Pixar-style wit with heartfelt storytelling, it leaned too much into safe, repetitive humor and shallow workplace comedy tropes. The show did highlight themes of inclusivity and teamwork, but critics argued that these messages were hammered in rather than woven naturally into the narrative. Tonally, it lacked the balance of child-friendly fun and adult appeal that Pixar usually masters. The new characters weren't strong enough to carry the story, and the absence of Mike and Sully as central figures left a noticeable void. For longtime fans expecting a clever continuation, the series felt like filler content that diluted the legacy of the original film. Ultimately, it came across as an example of Disney leaning too heavily on brand recognition without delivering the heart and originality that defined the Pixar standard. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Disney-owned shows that didn't quite make the cut, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content on the hits and misses of your favorite franchises. Let us know in the comments which show you think deserved a better fate.